Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Robins on the Wire, a Bristol Live podcast covering all things Bristol City. As usual, I'm Dan Carter and I'm joined by Jack Buchanan to reflect on what's been quite an exciting week at Ashton Gate, really. Back-to-back wins for the Robins against Norwich and Southampton. Plenty of good performances in there as well. And Jack, I think it's safe to say a bit more upbeat podcast this time round than last time we spoke.
Absolutely, mate. I've decided that bold Sinclair Armstrong is the second coming of God himself. So yeah, we are flying up to fourth, buzzing.
Yeah, obviously we're kind of mainly focused on Southampton, but just to reflect on that Norwich win. I know you didn't make the trip to Carrow Road, did you? But I think it felt like a big game before it got going, and certainly delivered on that sort of feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I managed to catch little bits of it through a definitely legal stream. And yeah, a good win for us. Obviously, keeping an eye on it on social media. A couple of big saves from Vitek, a second half goal from Sykes. It was well taken finish as well, to be fair to him. A ball that maybe didn't really he probably wasn't expecting to come all the way through to him. I think it went through quite a few bodies, didn't it, to get round to him. But he tucked it away nonetheless and, get that 1-0 win over the line. I think Vitek made a few saves at 1-0 as well, from what I've seen. So keeping it like that. And obviously, it's always nice to get the win over a former manager as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. I think actually we don't want to reflect on it too much as it already feels like quite a long time ago, doesn't it? But it felt big, I think, just because of the occasion. I wrote in, I think it was the predicted team that, it's quite mad that two teams separated by about 250 miles with no real previous history of any needle suddenly felt like a massive game because of who was in the dugout and I guess Norwich's start to the season really. I've wrote it a few times this week, but Gerhard was very keen throughout the build up to focus on, this is just a game, we prepare for him like any other opposition. I'm not focused on Liam Manning, but there was definitely a feeling when that full-time whistle went that, for everyone in black and white as it was on Saturday, it felt like a big win. You could see that in the celebrations. I think Gerhard even admitted it post-match. It felt like more than just 3 points. Partly was the City's own recent run and that it's not been a struggle, has it? But, it's been difficult. To get back to winning ways immediately after the international break and to do it against, the man you've replaced in the dugout. I can't really think of how that could have gone much better, really.
No, not at all. And it's nice to have seen us grind out a win, for want of a better word, I think, because we've not really done that yet so far this season. 4-1 at Sheffield Wednesday, 4-2 against Hull. Sheffield United 4-1, 3-0 at Sheffield Wednesday, 4-2 against Hull, like I said. And then now a 1-0 where, we were probably under the cosh a little bit more. Keeper forced into some good saves that we didn't have that cushion. It was nice to see a different side of this City team, I think. And then we saw an even different side to it again on Tuesday night, where they had to kind of battle back from 1-0 down and really grab the game by the scruff of the neck and drag ourselves back into it.
Yeah, I think we'll kind of switch on to that now, because I think it certainly felt a little bit different heading into Tuesday because of the result on Saturday. I think there was probably that almost acceptance that, if it had been a case of they'd lost to Norwich, lost to Liam Manning as well, that's a crucial thing to say, and they hadn't won in, I think that would have been 5 games without a win, wouldn't it? And 4 of those being at Ashton Gate, suddenly it has that feeling of, okay, this is almost a must win against the team that have only just come down from the Premier League. When you've beaten Norwich, suddenly you've got that almost buffer thinking, yes, we need to improve the home form. But I think heading into it, I don't know about you, but normally you've kind of got that idea of what to expect when you head into a game. Especially, obviously, I come from a slightly less biased view, I guess. But heading down to Ashton Gate on Tuesday, I had no idea really what to expect. It had that feeling where anything could happen, really.
Yeah, it did, and I don't think. I haven't watched Southampton until they came out at Ashton Gate on Tuesday night. I hadn't managed to catch any of their games on telly or anything, so I wasn't really sure what to expect from them from a sort of style of play aspect. I've never seen a Will Still team play before. Obviously this is his first job in England. So yeah, it was a lot of unknowns, and luckily we got the job done. A lot of possession based football from them. It felt like he'd swallowed the same coach and manual as Russell Martin and Liam Manning, I think, from what I could tell. But obviously I think it was 33% possession in the end for City. 9/10 of the rule, and we score a goal for every 10% based on Tuesday night. So can't really complain.
Yeah, I think you're right. I had that feeling of I remember covering games when City played Russell Martin, Swansea, and they're always, I feel like they're really weird games because, we'll kind of touch on like the individual moments in the match, but you almost feel under pressure, even though you're not having to like make any saves, or it's not like they were missing that many chances, but you almost just feel under the cosh because they've got 11 players in your half passing from right to left a lot of the time. It is a really bizarre feeling. Like I hadn't seen them really until this week. I know I was a fair bit of interaction after the full-time whistle on Tuesday that I know Will Still had said he felt that he enjoyed facing teams that tried to press his side because he felt that was the sort of games they came alive in. So it was interesting. Obviously, team news came out, and it's just the one change for City with Mark Sykes for Ross McCrory. I guess that kind of, like you say, really good finish at Norwich, but that kind of sums up where the Robins are at the moment, doesn't it? There's not loads of options available to Gerhard Struber. Not that he said it himself, he's not someone to tinker unnecessarily, but he's limited in what he can do, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think whilst you wouldn't want to tinker unnecessarily, like you say, if you've got 3 games in a week, it just would be nice to have an extra few pairs of legs to throw in. You're missing Max Bird, Joe Williams, Jason Knight. Those are 3 players there who, alongside Adam Randall, would make up 2 very good midfields. In whichever sort of combination you choose to put them in, you could play any of those 4 as a 2, and I think it works quite well. So yeah, missing out players like that, it is big. But like you said, the only change there, Sykes in for McCrory, makes sense. Scored the winner, and I think that's the same change that he made against QPR, isn't it? And Sykes came in for a fair bit of stick in that game, I think. So I think it was interesting. I'm glad he got the start. I thought he actually had a really good game, Mark Sykes, to be fair to him. The only issue I still have with him is defensively. I don't think he's as sound as Ross McCrory. Kind of naturally, he's a winger, not a fullback. But I thought George Tanner had a really, really strong game out on that right side of the 3, and managed to sweep up the odd sort of time where Sykes was out of position a little bit at the back.
Yeah, I think that's kind of when I'm thinking back to that first half, it felt like there was a lot of the ball down that kind of left side and then working it inwards, wasn't there? There was obviously a couple of early chances. I think it was Cameron Archer that fired over from the edge of the box and then quite early on, and it kind of summed up that 30 minutes almost, didn't it? Where it did feel like, I said, Vitek didn't have to do an awful lot. I think he got down to make a couple of decent saves, but that first 30 minutes, it felt like City were penned quite deep in on the edge of their own box, and then the pressure, I guess, told. We can go through Southampton's opener. It was quite a really good ball from Shea Charles into Adam Armstrong, proper defence splitting pass, and he's one of those players, isn't he, that in the Championship you kind of know what to expect when he gets in those positions. He's probably going to score, and I thought actually the composure he showed to get that past Vitek and get his head up and dink it like he did was perfect. It's a great ball, I guess. From my point of view, it did feel a bit like maybe Atkinson stepped out a second too soon, tried to press and catch him offside maybe, and then Borges is on a slightly different wavelength, and before you know it, one pass has got through you. I'm just interested to get your take on that goal.
Yeah, it just looked like there wasn't maybe the right amount of communication between the 2 of them. It looked like they almost went to do completely different things. Like you said, Atkinson stepped up and Vitek kind of dropped back to try and cut out the pass or get round Armstrong, I think. And it just didn't quite work. It actually reminded me a little bit of, certainly the finish anyway, of Joe Gelhardt's goal for Hull earlier on in the season. Very similar finish. And those are the only sort of times where we've seen Vitek be beaten in that sort of position, I guess. A lot of the other ones have come from set pieces or sort of goals that he couldn't do much about. And I appreciate, obviously, it's very hard for him to do much in that sort of situation as well. But we did see him do it about 10 minutes later when he, I don't know who it was that went through, but he made an excellent save, came out, made himself big. And I think it kind of hit him in the chest in the end and went away to the edge of the box before it got cleared.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one was Cameron Archer again. And, it was almost exactly the same position, and he's kind of tried the little dink as well. I mean, I'll be honest, I think we mentioned it a few times now, I play football at a horrifically low standard, but I'm not sure I'd ever be opting to try to chip the 6'7", 6'6" goalkeeper. I guess I'd like to ask Jack, what was like your sort of feeling when that goal went in? Because I kind of turned to the people around me in the press box, and it had that sort of feeling that, considering how the minutes had gone, although City had threatened on the break a little bit, it had that feeling of that could be that almost, that, if Southampton keep the ball as they have done, this could be quite a long evening.
Yeah, I think that was sort of my thinking. It was almost a here we go kind of, okay, this is we're going to have to do something here to step up to their their level, I guess, for want of a better word, in that first half an hour. We were just slightly too slow to each second ball, things like that, and it just allowed them almost to keep it. I think I saw a good tweet yesterday, I can't remember who it was now, saying that we always just showed them a little bit too much respect for that first half an hour. I think we just weren't quite playing our normal game. It didn't feel like, or certainly not to the level I know that we all know we can. And then it's an interesting pull through to Mehmeti, isn't it? Which is kind of sliced up in the air, I think, from what I could see. And he takes that finish so well. He lets the ball drop for him perfectly, waits for it to kind of come down to his level, brings it down, and that's brilliant finish into the bottom corner, like we've seen him do time and time again now this season.
Yeah, I thought, like you say, it's that bit of fortune, isn't it, for it to get through to him. It's interesting because I was thinking back to some of the press conferences we've had with Gerhard Struber in recent weeks, and he's spoken about although like obviously you need good performances, he's spoken about needing that little bit of luck at times and how he doesn't necessarily feel City have had that. You think back to the penalty decisions or the push on Ross McCrory in the QPR game, even the Oxford game, how basically everything they hit, it felt like from the top corner. You said he's not felt you have that bit of luck, and we'll come on to probably the bigger slice a lot later. But on Tuesday, it felt like City had that bit of fortune, and I think it was a really good goal from Mehmeti to score as well, because it wasn't too dissimilar from the chance at Preston, where you end up with plenty of time through 1-on-1. But it's weird because I never felt like he was going to miss. As soon as he got through, you kind of felt like, especially, I don't know if it's coming in from that right side a little bit more and going across the keeper. It's almost the same finish he does at Preston, just this time he puts it half a yard inside the post rather than half a yard outside it. And, it takes him to 5 for the season already. And I think it wasn't just that. It was good to see on Tuesday. He was just a constant threat again, and he just seems to be more involved in games this season. And like you say, it couldn't have been a better reply, really, could it? Because I think it eased that sort of sense that I had of how are you going to break this down, because it just showed that there was a way through that Southampton backline, and when they got through, City were capable of taking that chance.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Is because we didn't have a lot of the ball, we naturally didn't create too many chances for ourselves, but it felt like certainly the big ones that we did create, we took. And that's something we've probably been guilty of not doing in a lot of our games where we've not won this season. You think back to Oxford, we probably could have been 2 or 3 up before they score or certainly before they score their second, before the half-time break. Riis was missing a lot of chances then. It was Mehmeti's turn to miss a lot of chances at Preston. Ipswich, I think we probably had 1 or 2 where we maybe could have done a little bit better, but that was probably a fair result. And then QPR, we had a great first half and a terrible second half, didn't we? But yeah, it felt like Tuesday night something clicked in that attacking line. And like I said, I've already mentioned him, but moving on to the second half quickly, Sinclair Armstrong, I think, changed the game for us in that second half. I think he was doing a lot of running and he was just being a general menace. I don't really know how to describe it, but I think it was not long before we scored the third goal. Maybe he wins a free kick out in the corner by section 82, and you could just hear the roar as he was sort of tussling with one of the centre halves for the ball, wins it, and then goes down. And it's just like really, really clever play like that is what we need to see more from him. Because we saw it at points last season, just maybe not quite consistent enough.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? I spoke to Gerhard Struber about it on Tuesday night, and we mentioned it on Saturday after Norwich, but I thought it was a briefer cameo at Norwich, but there was a moment for me that almost it just looked different to me with Sinclair Armstrong, where the ball was bouncing on the edge of City's box, and I might be wrong, but I feel like before I've seen him, get into a tussle that he doesn't need to, or give away a foul with his physicality. And on Saturday, instead, he just stepped across his man, one of those where the ball was bouncing, he just almost parked himself, waited for the contact, waited till he got enough contact and hit the ground, and won the free kick. And it had been after a little bit of pressure, and it just eased it totally. And that wasn't the only thing he did at Carrier, but that was the moment that stood out to me of, okay, that's really, really intelligent striker play. And the thing is, when you've got a body like he has, use it. What an asset to have, to be that size and that pace. And, we spoke to Gerhard about it post-match on Tuesday, and he basically said they've been working with him on the timing of the runs, because too often they felt, he's too quick to basically get caught offside. There's no reason to get caught offside when you've got that pace. I think occasionally he might go too late as well. There's been a few of those I think I've seen before where the ball go and he maybe doesn't set off as you'd expect. And that's what was really good to see on Tuesday, the amount of times. And you mentioned it there, that roar when he the ball's over the top. And it's almost as the defender starts to think, oh, I'm all right, I've got time here. That's when he sets off. And when he sets off, you don't really know how to stop him. And it's not like he's just bundling in at full pace now. He's getting there, he's slowing down, he's using his body, trying to wrestle off the ball, hold the ball up. And, look, we all know he needs to score more goals, but he's given himself a much better chance of scoring goals when he's playing like that. I thought it was, and, it started a bit of a debate about him, really, hasn't it? Because I didn't see it, but I saw one or two people mention on social media they thought Emil Riis headed straight down the tunnel. I don't know if that was the case. We're due to hear from Gerhard Struber on Friday, so we'll get a bit of an update if there is one to give on his fitness. When that change was made early in the second half, we've spoken a lot about how Emil Riis, City's attack doesn't function without him. It feels like that couldn't be further from the case on Tuesday, where he used to call him a menace. Gerhard Struber called him a big monster, and Will Steele called him a pain in the backside. I think that's exactly what you want from Sinclair Armstrong.
Yeah, exactly. I suspect he probably had a bit of a pain in his backside after that Viner shot hit him, but yeah, he was just everywhere. And I don't mind if he doesn't score if he plays like that, because he's offering something. There have been too many times, unfortunately, where he's come on and he's not scored, and he's also not offered that. And it's like there have been times, like I think it was up at Derby when Emil Riis went off at half time, and it just kind of felt like almost like we were playing strikerless, and we are not Man City. We can't be doing that. So it was just really nice to see, and it's nice to see. And to be fair, I don't think the fans have ever given up on him per se. Like every time he comes on, everyone still cheers him on the pitch and sings his song and stuff. But when he's playing like that, people love him, because I saw a good tweet actually from a Southampton fan saying they've brought on a human battering ram. And that's what he was. It's almost a perfect description. He was just getting into people. And obviously, I don't know if he can quite claim the assist for that second goal, but I'm sure we'll come on to it in a minute.
Yeah, I think, I mentioned Will still calling him a pain in the backside there, but, he made the point that, I'm not quoting it exactly, but it's something along the lines of basically they're able to bring on, someone experienced at championship level to get them up the pitch and with physicality. And I was like, maybe that's what that to me almost shows exactly what's changed. Is that I imagine, and this might sound harsh, but I imagine there were times probably, if you're at that Derby game, for example, if you're John Eustace in the opposition dugout and you see Emil Riis going off and it's Sinclair warming up, there's probably a little bit of you that, although he's going to probably cause physical problems, there's probably a little bit of you that's thinking, well, that's going to help us not concede. Whereas you get the feeling these last two appearances, there will be defenders now, and there will be opposition managers that when they see him getting stripped and ready to warm up, they'll be thinking, oh God, I've got to defend against him, which, that can only be a good thing for Bristol City. And hopefully, I guess my hope is you'd like to think similar will happen with Fally Mayuli at some point, but he'll obviously need minutes to do that. So I get the feeling we might have to wait a little bit longer there. But you mentioned that second goal. I'm not sure it's going to be winning any Puskas awards, is it? But I don't know about you, but trying to sum that up in a live blog on Tuesday night, I was just looking at my screen like, how the hell do you even start to describe that? Because from where we were up in the Lansdowne stand, I couldn't even tell it had hit Sinclair Armstrong. I thought that Viner had scuffed it that badly.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it hit. It took a deflection. I didn't know it was Armstrong at the time. And then one of my mates turned to me and was like, I'm 99% sure that's hit Armstrong on the way through. And I was like, could you imagine if that was the goal he scored? Like, if it didn't hit the post? If that is almost the classic, you just need a goal off your backside to get the confidence flowing again. And I mean, it's close enough for me. I think the performance he put in will get his confidence back again after these past couple of weeks. And it's a clever little finish, to be fair, from Scott Twine to lift it back over the keeper, because we've probably seen it however many times through football where Twine might not have been switched on, or the attacker's not always switched on enough to get there, and the keeper reacts and dives to it. It's not like McCarthy was far away, but I don't think he was quite expecting the ball to roll back across that way. He almost like froze. There's a funny screenshot actually where the ball's basically through his legs, and he's a bit like, what do I do? And Twine's sort of halfway to the ball, and he just kind of lifts it over him, and it spins in. It almost looked like he was going to miss it for a split second from where I was, but he managed to tuck it away. And I mean, it's not quite as good a chip as his third. Well, his second, our third.
No, I think I saw there was a bit of debate going around after. I think it was Norwich where there was talk about is Scott Twine offering enough? Is he playing in the right position? This, that, and the other. And I was looking back at some of this stuff, mainly at Milton Keynes, where he pretty much played as a second striker. He wasn't. And when you think back to the goal he scored at Derby, which is very much, it's got that second striker sort of thing of arriving a bit late into the box and just finishing first time. The actual chance he missed at Norwich, which was pretty much the same chance, and then you've got that first goal. To actually have the awareness to keep yourself onside. I think he was onside. I've not checked too much on the replay. I know there were a few appeals. I think he was on. Yeah, to keep yourself onside, break onto that ball, and like you say, it's so easy when it's that chaotic. I think to just kind of lose your attention a bit, like McCarthy seemed to. But to not only get there, but then to have the awareness that, how often do we see a player in those positions try to absolutely put his foot through it, so that even if it's the keeper, it ends up in and it blazes over the bar, or you smash it into a keeper, or like sometimes you can almost be too close to the goal. But instead, he just has that awareness to just that bit of composure and lift it over him. And it might be the worst goal I've seen at Ashton Gate, and the best at the same time, because the finish is so good, but the lead up to it is, it's Sunday League, isn't it?
Yeah, it's some horrendous defending from Southampton as well. I think it must be said to even end up in that position. I think they had one or two chances to get it clear. It's a great piece of work from Randall down the right-hand side, though. He does the little kind of knock and run. Run sort of almost sets the Southampton defender to be a little bit stuck. The ball goes one way, Randall goes the other, and kind of scoops around him. It was really clever, because you get in that position, you're either got to get to the ball or win a free kick, aren't you? Because he's got a good turn of pace on him for a centre midfielder as well, I think. And yeah, it was clever play, but poor defending, I think, in and around the box. But yeah, a goal's a goal at the end of the day. I think it made a massive momentum shift as well, which we've spoken about a lot at Ashton Gate, I think, this season. The crowd really ramped up a level after the equaliser, but after that second goal went in, it felt like it was on par with sort of how we were feeling against Middlesbrough and West Brom at 1-1 last season, before eventually getting the third. And it was kind of a party atmosphere from then on, because Southampton didn't really offer a lot, I don't think, after that.
Well, I think it was so much of what they did well came before that. And this, I think it's worth saying, is they could have killed that game off before the second, because you've got, I can't remember who it was that hit the crossbar, obviously, with that curling right foot effort from the left wing where he came in and rattles the bar. I think it's one of those where Vitek leaves it because he thinks it's going over and it might dip a little bit. I get the feeling if it was on target, because it was quite down the middle, Vitek might have been able to deal with it. Then the big chance from me is the Shea Charles one from the corner where, he gets basically unmarked at the front post, gets his header, and I don't know how the hell he managed to put it over the Atia stand, into there. Will Steele was baffled post-match. And you do get the feeling maybe if they'd scored then it would have been different, because like you said, the momentum seemed to really shift in that moment on the second goal. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you kind of had, from my point of view, had that feeling when the second one went in. I'll tell you what, if they can get a third, it's done, because the momentum was like it was, but they needed to get that third because they definitely weren't comfortable at 2-1. No. I'll be honest, I couldn't quite believe how it came about again, because it seemed like Scott Twine was quite clearly pressing that passing, cutting off that passing lane to everyone inside the ground, other than the person who played the pass. Equally, of City's front three, I'm not sure he's the one I'd want running through. He's not exactly the quickest. And when he checked onto his left foot, I've got to be honest, my heart was in my mouth a little bit. I don't know if yours was the same, because I was just expecting him to go with his right and curl it, and he kind of took shaped on his left. I was thinking, oh God, what's coming? But then the finish, I thought, look, it's Struber talks about sexy football. That's a sexy finish, isn't it? It's got that sort of Lionel Messi dink sort of feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was an incredible finish, and I think he was lucky the amount of space he had, because, like you said, he's not the quickest. I don't know who it was coming across from the far side for Southampton, but they very nearly got to him. To be fair, he had to take the shot when he did, and he's done really well to keep it under control, lift it over McCarthy. And it was a night for chips, wasn't it? I've only really just noticed this now that we're saying about it. 3 of the 4 goals being little dinks. It's rare that you see 1 in a game, let alone 3. But yeah, hell of a finish. Fair play. He had a great game, I thought. He was just kind of everywhere. He offered a little bit more off the ball as well for me. I know I think it was in the first half. He put in almost a bit of a slide-in interception rather than a tackle, and there was a bit of a roar from sort of the south stand and the Dolman. It was a bit like, right, okay, maybe he's going to have, because he goes in that sort of fits and starts with me sometimes, where I think he has 1 or 2 really, really good performances like that, and then sometimes he goes off the boil and goes not missing, but kind of under the radar for 3 or 4 before you get another game like last night where he's just on it.
Yeah, I think I said it to you the other week that for me he's one of those players, and I don't like the term luxury player because I think he works far too hard to be that sort of luxury player. But I think back to some of the ones City have had in the past that, you know, they're sort of number 10s. If you think of like a Lee Tomlin or a Casey Palmer, maybe even like he's probably closer to like a Jamie Patterson style, I think, because he works probably harder than the pair of them. But where, you know, because they occasionally try those difficult things, and he'll try to like thread a pass through the eye of a needle, and he'll try to shoot from 40 yards when he gets a chance. You know, he I think there's a reason he's playing at this level, isn't there? You know, if he was able to do the things he can do at his best week in, week out, we'd be talking about a Premier League footballer, because he has got that quality when he's at his best. I guess the challenge for him now is being more consistent, but you could say the same about Emil Riis, Anis Mehmeti, Ross McCrory to a degree. You know, it's the same for basically all of them. But to me, it felt like a bit of a reminder after quite, like you said, quite a couple of weeks, because I think even the games where he has played better over the last few weeks, I think back to Hillsborough, you know, he played some really nice passes there and was involved in quite a few goals. I think at Preston, he like tried to get things going with a couple of nice passes. It's felt like he's probably been the quietest of that front three in a spell where they've all been a little bit quieter. And Norwich on Saturday felt to me like one of those where he was getting closer to having that moment where it just clicked for him. And I actually thought in the first half on Tuesday, it felt similar where, you know, he's getting closer, but it's just not. I obviously write the player ratings as the game's going on. And I think I'd written something along the lines of, you know, got in some really good areas, but the final ball or final shot just let him down. There was that shot from the corner where he scuffed the half volley that he ran onto. And it had that feeling. It's one of those where I literally deleted the whole paragraph when the first goal goes in and the second goal goes in, because you're like, no, because he can do it. And it's just when it doesn't quite click, you really notice it, because you know he's capable of playing to that high level.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you say, it was a big switch, I think, into the second half. First half, a lot of our play was going through Twine. Like he had that one where he went through and he played Mehmeti in on the left, and we just couldn't quite end up. I think did Mehmeti cut the ball back and no one was there at the back post or something like that?
Yeah, ended up like on the edge of the box, and no one was quite. Yeah.
Just no one really just kind of got there. But it felt like everything was going through him. But then, like you said, that final product just wasn't there. He had that shot that kind of went high and wide into the Atio, as well as the one from the corner, which I think actually came off his knee, didn't it? In the end, it looked like it from back here. It was, you know, I may as well have had the shot. And that is certainly saying something, because I'm not very good at football. But yeah, it was a hell of a performance in the end, and fair play to him. I hope he delivers the same on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's the thing to me. I think, you know, when you've got players of that quality, you want them to be performing to that level, don't you? And yeah, same with him and same with Mehmeti, that almost their biggest issue is the fact that we all know how good they can be. So when they slip below that standard, it does stand out to you. I just thought from that, when that third goal went in, it kind of felt like the game was done, didn't it? And I don't know if that's partly just the crowd, you know, the chants. I'm sure you were joining in with the when the Saints style thing. You know, it had that feeling of, okay, this is done and dusted, and it ended up feeling quite comfortable. Which, you know, when you think back to in the space of about 30 minutes, that first 30 minutes was probably as uncomfortable as City have been this season. And then the next 30 minutes later, the game's done. It was a hell of a turnaround. I know something you wanted to talk about in general is kind of the spirit within that group and the way they come back. I wrote in the verdict this week that, you know, the last two press conferences I've been in, Liam Manning has had to respond to questions about the kind of culture and the mentality of his players, as has Will Steele on Tuesday night. And Gerhard Struber basically listed off about 18 different monsters in his team. Instead, he was talking about how close this group is, and, you know, the fact they're never beaten and how adaptable they are. This team, I think it can go under the radar because we're almost used to them now. They are like a bunch of fighters, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think you could see it at the back end of last season as well, even when maybe Leeds, to be fair. But I don't know, other than that, the last time it felt like we were out of a game. You know, Oxford this season, I finished 3-1, but their third goal came pretty late, and it was like 80-something minute. You know, we were really pushing for that equaliser before that. QPR, obviously, we were 1-0 up, and they scored twice in semi-quick succession. And again, we were looking for that equaliser. Probably should have had a penalty ahead of full Yu Hirakawa, which is never ideal. It's one of those where, yeah, we're just always in it. And as long as you can ask for that, then naturally the results will come alongside it, because if you're always in a game, you've always got the chance of winning it, haven't you? And we showed that on Tuesday night.
I was trying to think back as well when, like, the last time. I was thinking back to some of the comments I've seen about the Southampton players this week, and I think there's been stuff from fans about it's quite clear the players don't care, or there's just no drive, no hunger. And I was trying to think back to like games where I know I've only been covering the club coming up to a year now, but I was trying to think back to if there's been many times, if any, that I've been able to say that about these players. There's been games where they, like you mentioned the Leeds game there last year, where they were trounced because Leeds were much higher quality. I think the Sheffield United game in the playoffs last year is the same. It's the quality that's been the undoing of them. There's not too many times where I've felt it's a lack of hunger that has come back to bite them. I think maybe the Portsmouth game, I know you weren't there, but the Storm last year. But maybe that one was one where they didn't look quite up for it. But like, I'm not even sure you can say that with that. It was just a bad day. So I do think it's one of those things that's impossible to measure, isn't it? We can't sit and measure expected hunger of a team, but you'd imagine City are right near the top of that scale.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing for me is you've got a group of players there who I don't think any of them have ever played Premier League football. I might be wrong, but I can't think of any off the top of my head that have ever played. Maybe Scott Twine might have featured at some point, but other than that, you've got a group of players who are so close to the Premier League from a point of getting in the playoffs last season. All right, yeah, it didn't go very well, but we started this season really strong, sat up in fourth. If we can carry that on for the vast majority of this season, we'll be in that position again. And why wouldn't you be hungry? The fans want it, the players want it, and I think there's a real, at the end of the game last season, like you said, there real team spirit and togetherness. Because how often do you see three players come over and do the fist bumps? It's like everyone wanted their moments. They were pushing Pecover, not quite sure how you say it, into the corner for his moment. He just made his debut. Then you get Zach Viner doing it at the opposite end of the scale, who's just broken the championship appearance record. And it's just really nice to see. Those are the moments that we haven't seen from City players for the last few years, I think. And we maybe saw it a bit at the back end of last season, like I said, but it just feels like Gerhard Struber's really onto something this year.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I feel. It feels like there's a lot of players there that feel they have a point to prove, rightly or wrongly. I said it after Norwich, the point where was, and I don't think they'll ever say it, but I'm sure there will have been conversations in that dressing room along the lines of, let's go show him that he was wrong to leave. Yeah. Even if it's not said, that's what will be in their mind. Equally, there will be, if you're Neto Borges, you're probably thinking, I want to go show Middlesbrough why I'm good enough to play left wing back in a team that's fighting for promotion. He'll want to do that. Zach Viner will want to show that he can take the team. He's one of City's own. He'll want to be fighting for the Premier League. And it feels that, I think it'd be easy after last year for some players to start to rest on their laurels and think, well, we've got in the playoffs, we've ended that weight, we've kind of done our bit. And instead they're thinking, no, we've got that close and we could have done better. And they're doing it. I think it's mental. We've not even mentioned the injury word yet. But, they're doing it without, you listed them off earlier, no Jason Knight, who was probably the most important player last year. No Max Bird, who played probably about 45 games in all competitions last year. You're still at the back line. You're not able to play Zach in his position because you're having to play him elsewhere. And that's before we get on to even Josh Stokes. They have really high hopes for this year. He's not been able to play. It's not quite bare bones. It's not far off.
No,
but they will have wanted another striker as well, and they're still scoring goals. It's that thing of, I guess the exciting thing is it probably feels like there's still more to come.
100%. And I think another really important person to include in that is Joe Williams, because I think he stepped up in some really, really crucial moments last year. Even little things, or well, not so little really, but important moments that maybe get forgotten. Like he was the one that got Malumbi sent off against West Brom, and he gets up and he laughs at him, and it gets the crowd going and things like that. And he's like he's a player you always want on your team, or in and around your team at least, because he can come on for that last 10 minutes if you're chasing a game or if you're trying to hold out a lead, and he'll just get at people. He'll fly into a tackle. Yeah, all right, it might get him booked, but he will always give that 110%. And it's the same with Jason Knight again. Cameron Pring is a top championship fullback, and he's not played a minute since the playoff semi. I think there's a lot more to come from this side, and that's very, very exciting considering the position we're in. at the moment with, like you say, almost a bare bones squad.
Yeah, and there's a point echoed by Gerhard Struber. You know, I don't like to ask about the table, so I didn't. Somebody else did. You know, mention the fact, you know, they're fourth at the moment, and you know, is this as good a start as you expected? Is it better, sort of question? And he turned around and went, look, like if it's good, it means the season. I think he always says the season's still very young, but rather than just fobbing it off, you know, certain managers have done that in the past. You know, I understand why. Rather than fobbing it off, he basically said it shows me that this team are ready, and I liked that. I was like, that's what the table should be used to at this stage. It shouldn't tell you that they're going to get in the playoffs, because to be quite honest, they could lose every game between now and the end of the season. But with, I think 11 games is a sort 10, 11 games, I think is fine to have a look, because it should tell you whether or not a team can perform against different types of teams. And the early indication is that City can probably be in and around it this year if they keep this up. And I think everyone has every right to be a bit excited. We mentioned him a second ago with the celebrations. We should just stop and mention Leo. I think it's Pecover. It's the first academy debut I believe City have had since Elijah Morrison back in April 2024. He came on against Rotherham. I think that was the final home game of that season. I think it might have been a Tommy Conway penalty and a Scott Twine free kick that day. That
was.
And yeah, 2-0 win over Steve Evans' Rotherham, which feels like an absolute age ago now. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that is a long time.
And you know, one of the things that when Gerhard Struber came in was spoken about a lot was the academy pathway, and I imagine it's probably taken a little bit longer than some fans may have hoped to get a debut. But really special night for both the academy and Leo himself.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, maybe it has taken slightly longer, but equally, there haven't been many positions that we've probably been in since he's been on the bench regularly, at least, that you'd have wanted to bring him on, I don't think. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. You might know if he was on the bench at Hillsborough, that probably would have been a good time to bring him on if he was. But since then, we've not been in a position where you'd want an academy lad to be thrown on for 20 minutes just because he might be decent and he's got to have a debut at some point. You know, we've been in games where we've lost 2 and drawn 2 and then beaten Norwich, and then obviously he came on Tuesday night. But I thought he looked good. I thought, you know, from what you've been saying, having watched a lot more academy football than I have with him, that he's a solid player. Obviously, Struber rates him. He's rated within the sort of the in-house staff and stuff like that, which is always a good sign. And I thought he put himself about a bit, and he didn't seem, you know, he didn't shy away from the ball. He didn't get on it a whole lot, but you know, he only came on for 15 minutes. I wasn't expecting him to come on and score a hat trick or anything like that. But another thing is also big shoes to fill when you're coming on for Scott Twine, who's just scored twice and had a really good sort of 20-minute spell before he came off. But yeah, I thought he was good. Hopefully, a few more debuts to come before the end of the season, maybe here and there. Yeah,
I think you kind of, when I've watched Pecover before, I think, you know, the exciting thing about him is his dribbling ability. I think he scored that goal in the final, the under-18s last year at Ashton Gate, where he pretty much picked the ball up on the halfway line and just drove with it. We know he can do that. If you can do that at youth level, you know, you don't just forget to dribble just because of the championship. What I was looking to see on Tuesday was, okay, how do you cope with the physicality of it? Do you look like a kid? Because I think we've spoken about youngsters before. I think that's like when Ephraim Yeboah came in, and that was almost the most exciting thing about him under Nigel Pearson was the way in which he was willing to put himself about and didn't shy away from things. And I thought that, you know, that's what was exciting for me for Leo Pecover last night. You know, he's a teenager, and looking at him, he didn't look out of place on that field, did he? Against a Southampton team that, you know, there's some really good quality players in there, and he didn't look like a kid on the pitch. You know, he's not the shortest. He looks like he can perform at that level.
No, he's built very similarly to Cameron Pring from sort of what I could tell from where I was. You know, that, like I say, he's got a bit of pace to him. He's a good sort of build for a footballer, I guess. And I think the other thing to remember is when he did get the ball, he was running at Taylor Harwood-Bellis, who was a full England international. I watched him make his debut and score for England less than a year ago in that 5-0 over Ireland. So it's like, you know, you can't have expected sort of magical things from him, but like you say, he didn't look out of place. I think if you were a Southampton fan and you didn't know it was his City debut, or you didn't know he was, you know, a teenager, you'd go, all right, they've brought on someone that's been here for a year or so and has just come on and he's done okay. You know what I mean? I don't think he looked like he's some sort of, however old he is, like you say, a kid running around who shouldn't be there or anything like that.
No, exactly. And I think that's a really encouraging place to be, isn't it? And, you know, the wonders of the Championship is that we don't have to wait too long for another one. Birmingham City in town at, on Saturday afternoon. I asked Gerhard if that was a good thing, or not to have a game so quickly after. And, you know, kind of leading into the, you know, the quick turnaround, the injuries, expecting him to give me something on that. And he did give me a longer answer, but he basically started with, yeah, why not? And I thought that's, you know, what an attitude to have. You know, they've got basically their feeling at the moment is they're enjoying playing football. They feel they're in games. And when you 1-2 on the bounce, you probably do feel confident heading into it. Against the Birmingham side, you might know a bit more than me, Jack. I think can kind of doing really well for what is a newly promoted side, but given the talk around them heading into the season, probably a bit of an up and down start, really. I think they won on Tuesday night against Preston, which was their first win in 6 or 5, I think.
Yeah, they kind of flew out the blocks a little bit, didn't they? But it's got off the boil until Tuesday night, like you say. But I think they might have all got a little bit too big for their boots, maybe in the summer. Having had obviously the best points tally in League One ever, I think it was, wasn't it, last season? Possibly ever for an EFL season. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's certainly up there. Somehow did better than us, but still didn't quite win the double, did they? So, you know, thank you, Peterborough. Appreciate it. But yeah, they've done all right. I think it'll be an interesting one. They'll always be bringing down a fair few fans. Birmingham, one of the best fan bases, I think, in and around sort of the Midlands. You've got so many football teams there, aren't you? And they always travel in good numbers to Ashton Gate. Obviously, it's only an hour and a half, 2 hours. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I can't make it. I'm flying out to Lanzarote at 4:15, so I might be able to watch some of the first half, or certainly keep an eye on the score. But don't laugh at me about holidays, Dan. No way. I'll still be doing the pod next week, mate.
Man, it's disgusting. Going on holidays during the season, I would never miss. How can you miss the visit of the mighty Birmingham City FC?
When you were at Wembley when we were playing Fulham, mate?
Yeah, I was actually, yeah. Didn't miss a league game though, did I, Jack? Didn't miss a league game. No, it feels like another big one, doesn't it? I don't know why. Yeah. I think not because of the terms that they need to win or there's any pressure on them. It just feels like if you can come through what I think we said it. Was it last week when we were speaking about kind of the run and saying, oh God, you know, Norwich away, Southampton, Birmingham. You kind of go, oh God, like there's a good. I think it's that thing where if we got 5 points, we'd probably be 5-6 points. You know, they're on 6 already. If you can come away with 7 or 9, it's a brilliant week. If you come away with 6, it's by no means a terrible week. If you can come away with 9, though, you know, they could be, I think, as high as 3rd, depending on results elsewhere, and then you've got a whole week to rest and recover. I guess the talking point that some people will be discussing is just what do you do team-wise, because we mentioned the 3 games in a week. We mentioned, you know, Gerhard was still only used 14 different players as starters in the league. You know, he has stuck with that quite consistent team. In an ideal world, there'd be rotation, wouldn't there, because of the turnaround. With this squad as it is, how many changes can you see? Because if I'm honest, I can only think of one I think will be made, assuming everyone's fit.
Yeah, I think if we're working on the basis that Emil Riis is fine, I think he keeps his place. I had an interesting chat with someone on Twitter the other day. So they were saying, Riis injured or not, would you start Armstrong? I think Armstrong, I mean, we've only seen him perform like that off the bench. But I think that is when he's at his best, personally, is when he comes on and he can, if he's running like that at a tiring defence with an hour left to play or so, then that's when he's got to have that better impact, I think, because you're running at someone who's already been running for nearly an hour, and then you're coming on with fresh legs and he's rapid and he's strong and he can just get at them. So I wouldn't start him if Riis is fit. I think we might see the typical Sykes/McCrory change. I think that's probably the one you were leaning towards as well. Other than that, there are probably some changes that would maybe need to be made if we had a fully fit team from an aspect of fitness, but I don't think there's really many that we can. No,
I was thinking this. I was like, if I was trying to think about how this week could go if, let's say, you have no injuries. And firstly, obviously, like, you know, you mentioned we didn't give him much praise there. You know, George Tanner was brilliant, but he wouldn't have probably started on Tuesday night. You'd have had Viner. At which point you'd have probably started Jason Knight and Adam Randall in one game, and then Jason Knight and one of Max Bird or Joe Williams in the other game. You'd have just probably rotated those 2 across the 3. All 3 probably would have started one next to Jason Knight, you'd imagine. And similarly, left wing back, you'd probably have Cam Pring play one game and then Neto the other one. And maybe Josh Stokes would have come on off the bench with one of Mehmeti and Twine as well to give them a rest. And I was thinking about how different. I'd be really intrigued to see how much of a tinkerer Gerhard Struber is when he's got options, because I know we've said so far. He said to me, I think it was last week, that I'm not quoting it exactly, but when people are playing well, why would I change it? And I love that attitude.
Yeah.
But it's quite an easy attitude to have when there's not obvious changes. The Sinclair one's interesting, isn't it? Because I think I'm at a position now where if Riis isn't fully fit, I would have no issue if T-News comes out on Saturday. What is it, 1:45, and Riis isn't in the squad and Armstrong starting. I wouldn't. If Riis is able to start, I still think he's the man you want a chance to fall to.
Yeah, 100%. I think Armstrong obviously offers brilliant things, like we've said, for large parts of this podcast. But I think if the ball drops for someone in the box in our entire squad, you probably want it to be Emil Riis. I think he's the one that you're most likely to back to just smack it into the back of the net, and that might be what we need on Saturday. We don't know what sort of game we're going to end up. We could have a game like Sheffield United and Hull and Sheffield Wednesday where we have an abundance of chances. We could have a game like Tuesday night where we only have 4 or 5 and we have to take the ones we get. It'll be interesting. So I think the only change I would or can see really being made, assuming that Riis is all right, is probably McCrory back in for Sykes, just for that little bit of rotation.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on. I reckon we'll probably be close. Like I said, we've got press conference on Friday. We're due to hear from Gerhard Struber and Mr. Chip himself, Scott Twine. So looking forward to that. I'm sure he'll be happy to be asked about something other than free kicks, to be quite honest. But once that's normally the line of questioning he gets interrogated on, so he'll probably be quite happy to talk about some chips instead. Might as well finish up with the score prediction, Jack. I can't remember. Did you get your one right in Norwich? I can't remember what you said.
No, I said 2-1, I think, because that was what I put in my article. And I said 2-1 on Tuesday night as well. This time round, I'm going to go with 2-2. Little bit of a Desmond. Why not?
I'm going to go. I reckon this might be a 1-1. I reckon, and I think I'd be quite happy with the point if I was Gerhard Struber, considering how the week's gone so far. I say we'll have all live updates from press conference tomorrow on Friday afternoon. That will all be over on Bristol City Live on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook or Bristol Live website online. As usual, you can find Jack and all his stuff on Twitter. I'm sure he'll give that a shameless plug for you now.
Yeah, it is just at Jack Buchanan with an underscore in between Jack and Buchanan. So go and check it out, please.
Perfect. So we'll have live updates like through the game, through the weekend, through everything, bit of reaction, plenty more to come before then as well. And we'll be back with another episode. Who have they got next weekend, Jack? I can't think. Is it Stoke away?
It is Stoke away, and I'm still not there because I don't fly back from Lanzarote until 6 o'clock in the evening. My girlfriend's going without me.
Oh, well, credit to her. She's a true fan, unlike you.
I wonder who'll get home first.
Oh, well, I'm probably backing you there because Stoke is a new ground for me. I'm looking forward to it. But we'll have an episode before then. Jack will be doing it from his sunbed, so please give him plenty of grief, as I will.
I'll get the Stephen Bunting bucket hat out for you all.
Oh, please do. We all want to see that. Right. On that lovely note, I don't quite know how to end on that. We'll be back next week. Until then, everyone enjoy Saturday's game, and we'll catch you then.
Cheers, guys.